What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the show. We are going to do a fun one today. What we have in store today for us is 5 key takeaways through the first 10 games of the season. So with the past 2 results not being all that great, I was kind of struggling to figure out what I wanted to do with those because I started the film study on Wolves, and it was kind of like not too much to glean from that other than, different than what we've seen in previous games. And then the Bodo game, I only got to watch the second half, but that kind of turned out to be similar to previous games that we saw this season, kind of similar issues. So I was already kind of working on this video to do maybe a little bit later in the season, but we're going to do 5 key takeaways through the first 10 games of Tottenham season and kind of just look over some of the broader themes throughout the season and see what Thomas Frank has set the guys up to do and how the players are playing and all that kind of stuff, right? So one quick note on that. I posted something in the community thing yesterday talking about how I would really like your guys' feedback on which videos you guys like to see me do. Obviously, with this channel being new, I'm still trying to get into the groove of like when I'm making videos, how many I can make a week and all that kind of stuff, and what you guys like to watch too. So let me know either in that post or in the comments of this one. But for today, let's just get right into this video and look at our first key takeaway. So our first key takeaway, Mohamed Kudus is our most effective attacking player and could be the best attacking player we have as well. But do we rely on him too much? And spoiler alert, we do. So let's just go through these real quick and we'll actually go look at them in the rankings and dive into them a little bit deeper. So 10th in shot creating actions with 23 this season. These are based on Premier League numbers. So of the entire Premier League, 10th in shot creating actions with 23. First in league in crosses with 46. Poro second, by the way. So that goes to show you what we're doing, right? Third in expected assists plus goals with 1.8. 11th in progressive carries with 20. Most touches in the attacking third of any player in the Premier League. Most successful take-ons of any player in the Premier League. 6th in the key passes with 12, Poro right behind him at 11th with 10 key passes. And so the overall point with this is not only Kudus' impact, but as you can see, the player behind him in a lot of these is Pedro Porro, which this goes to show how much he and Pedro Porro are involved in creation, how heavily we rely on attacking down the right side. When you look at these statistics, there's a huge drop-off in creation from other players, and almost none of it is coming from the left side. Cuti Romero is higher up in a lot of these stats than our other attackers are, which is, good for Cuti and his abilities, but not good for our overall ball progression. Javi will help with this some, obviously, but it goes to show how void of impact the left side is. So let's just quickly go look at that, and you can see exactly how far down the list you have to go to get to some of these other players for Tottenham. So we have shot creating actions here. Mohamed Kudus in 9th of the entire Premier League, 23. And then you have to go all the way down here to Pedro Porro, 52nd with 13. So you can see that huge drop off. That's nearly 50%. And then we go down even more. Lucas Bergvall in 86, and then Richarlison, Rodrigo. So we have the cluster of players here that are producing at about the third of the rate of Mohamed Kudus. So let's go to the next one, right? So crosses. Mohamed Kudus 46, Pedro Porro 40 this season, which is quite a big jump from the 3rd and 4th place players as well. And when I was doing the Wolves preview, that's something that I brought up was that we were actually 3rd in the entire Premier League in crosses, and behind Wolves was 1st, I think. And that my point I was making there, which kind of outlines here, is that that's not necessarily a good thing, because if you're lower down the table and you're crossing a lot, that kind of means that that's really the only way that you can progress the ball and create attacks, great chances. And that's kind of showing in a lot of the numbers here, not just the ones that we've looked at already, but some of the ones we'll look at later. And so that is a little bit of a concern, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So if we head back over here, so the next thing we can look at, crosses wise, we're going to be really up high. It's actually kind of hilarious that Xavi Simons, only playing a handful of games for us in the Premier League, is already 31st. So you can see what Thomas Frank wants to do, which, again, we'll talk about that in a sec. So now we're here at XAG. You have Mohamed Kudus in third place in the entire Premier League. You have to go all the way down to 44th, Richarlison at, again, 50% of the rate. So then we head over here, and then we have player possession stats, successful take-ons. Mohamed Kudus, 24 of them this season. He also has attempted the most in the Premier League, and he's also got the most touches in the attacking third of any player in the Premier League. Do you want to take a guess who the second one is? It's Pedro Porro. Our right back has the most touches, second most touches of all of our players in the attacking third this season. And you have to go all the way down to Jed Spence, who's our left back, and then our central midfielder, number 10 at sometimes, Lucas Bergvall. And then you saw Richie there for probably just a brief second at about right here, right? So that all kind of just goes to show, if we go back to our outline here, how much impact Pedro Porro as well, but Mohamed Kudus has had on the season. And I think that it's a good thing to say that Mohamed Kudus has absolutely so far this season, in my opinion, been the signing this season and has exceeded or at least met the expectations we had for him when we signed him. So that's fantastic to see that we've added a really high quality starting piece to our starting 11, to our squad. But with everything we just lined out there, you can see that we are absolutely void of creation through the left side and through the middle. And so that's something that's going to have to change. And my main question with that is, because, obviously we're still a long way from January, you can't really make any additions to the squad, and we're not going to really get any additions through players coming back from injury. Decky's probably later towards, closer to January, maybe Christmas time. Matters maybe the whole season. Solanke's not really creation, but thinking about starting players. He's going to be probably a couple weeks to a couple months because he just had that minor surgery on his ankle. So yeah, we're having to do a lot of this. Thomas Frank is going to have to figure this out with who we already have in the squad. So I do have faith that he will, because I think he's a great manager, but it's a big problem that he's going to have to solve. And, we've looked at in previous videos, the build up through the middle and all that kind of stuff. And so these are all elements, all pieces in this overall problem that he's going to have to try to solve and put them together correctly, right? So let's move on to our second one. And that is, defense is a lot more solid than last season, and that's something that I need to be more appreciative personally. I think I put too much expectation on scoring goals and looking really, really good early on in Thomas Frank's tenure. 5 clean sheets in all competitions out of 10 games, just the third fewest goals allowed this season, with just 4 allowed through 6 games, Premier League obviously. However, our XGA has us 8th with 7.1 expected goals allowed. So there are things to improve on still. A big part of that difference is Vicario in 4th among keepers with 1.8 post-shot XG. Really, even through the Wolves game, we didn't allow much. Just one big chance that came off that goal, and 3 shots on target out of 9 shots total. So, and then even if we look at the Bodo game last night, it's still not, that was that was pretty bad. I'll be honest, as far as output goes, 2 stunners of goals, and Bodo was a very good side. And maybe I should pull up here in a second the passing network from that one too, because that was kind of hilarious. I'm actually going to look for that right now when I'm talking. So, but defensively, I think I need to be a lot more level-headed and reasonable about how well that we've actually done on defense this season. And so that's something that I'm going to pull up here for you guys to see. We can look at the overall numbers and see that in the Premier League, obviously we're 4th in the table at this point. Goals allowed, we've only allowed the 3rd most, tied with Sunderland, which, by the way, Sunderland, good on them, dude. That's awesome to see them play this season. But you can see here, expected goals allowed, we're closer to mid-table. So it's we are still giving up decent chances and allowing the teams to get into good scoring opportunities. So this is what I wanted to talk about, or what I just thought about a Bodo game. Going back to kind of the previous issue, which is all, these are all issues tied in together to some degree. This passing network from the last game. So now the comment I made on this is basically like a what not to do and what to do. Bodo Glint being the what to do with the ball. I mean, you can see the combinations to every single player. They're not excluding players. They're playing different triangles. It's just the ball's moving all around. And then we literally have from Vicario out to the center back, to the fullback, to the winger, both sides. Like that's literally, and nobody's passing to Richie. Like that is basically the antithesis to like how you should be progressing the ball in the Premier League in 2025. But anyways, to go back to the defensive point thing, to focus on that. Yeah, like I think we do need to be appreciative that, especially after the season we had last season, where we were just shipping in almost 2 goals a game, that the defensive solidity that Thomas Frank has brought is going to be a good thing for us. Now, here's the point that I want to make about that is you don't want him to go too far in that direction, right? So at some point, he needs to kind of understand that, okay, we're in a good spot. We've laid the foundations for the defense to be, a big part of what we're going to do game by game. But he needs to start to, progress a little bit and think of other things that he needs to work on. And make those more of an emphasis, because if like we have a blueprint to the team that doesn't give up a lot of goals, but also doesn't score that many goals, and that's Everton the last 2 seasons. They're near the top of the league in goals allowed for the last couple seasons under both Sean Dyche and David Moyes, but they were also near the bottom in goals scored, and what that gets you is a 12th place finish. So it's like that's not where we need to be, and I think Thomas Frank knows that the expectations are higher than that. And so hopefully at this point, sometime here soon, he can, he's thinking about doing things more progressively and working on more of that possession and progression and attacking kind of things and making that more of the emphasis. So going back to our third one now, this is kind of part of that whole problem, right? Our underlying attacking numbers are mid-table. Can we improve on them with the personnel that we have? Like I touched about on the Mohamed Kudus thing, we're going to have the personnel that we have through basically the rest of this window until the January window, right? So we go over here. Let's just read those out real quick before I go over and show you. So 10th in shots on target, 10th in shots taken, 11th in XG, 10th in expected assists, 4th in crosses into the penalty area, good, but we're probably too reliant on that. 11th in key passes, 10th in shot creating actions. So my question is, what will Frank do tactically to change this? This is why I keep banging on about having Xavi play the number 10 centrally as part of the midfield 3, not just to get the most out of him, but to get the most out of the side. And so I think that's where we could probably come over here, actually, and look at our tactics board, because which I haven't even set up, by the way, so this is probably all over the place. But the reason why I wanted to have Xavi in the midfield 3, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Xavi, but Xavi's kind of really our only option, so this would be Decky, this would be Matters when they're back and available, is because when you have them out here on the left, and we'll look at some screenshots here in a second to illustrate exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to set the defense up perfectly right here because I just want to quickly make this point. But if you have our normal progression like you just saw there in the passing chart, and we're moving things up like this, and you have Xavi as this player, let's just move Johnson out right now and bring in Bentancur because that's kind of something that we've seen recently. What you're seeing is when Xavi comes and collects the ball occasionally, then you're having Bentancur come out wide, and you're having Richarlison come out here. That's what we're going to look at in the screenshot. And so your rotations just aren't quite there, because if you have Sarr, who was actually replaced for Bergvall in that last game, you're then having Bergvall be in the attacking line as playing as that number 10. He's basically as like a second striker. You have Richarlison in this kind of half space here. You have Xavi coming and collecting, and so that when he plays the ball, you'll have Bentancur come out here. He rotates. You'll have Spence or your doggy come over here. And then you're kind of playing these triangles in here where it's like, actually, I think Richarlison came all the way out here, and then you had Bentancur coming here. So it's like you're not really having your attacking players in the best positions that they could be. And And I'm not trying to say, I mean, these are Premier League players. You want them to be, rotational and be versatile and be able to do multiple things. But it's like, ultimately, you probably don't want your number 10 to be, when you have a chance creation problem, right? When you have a build-up problem, you don't really want your number 10 playing as a second striker. You probably want him, instead of making runs off the ball, you probably want him on the ball and, playing combinations and making little moves in between players and doing stuff like that. So let's look at that screenshot sequence here, and I'll show you exactly what I was talking about from the Wolves game. Okay, so here's what we were just talking about. So you have here, obviously, Xavi's dropping deep to receive the ball from Mickey. In this screenshot here, you have Udogie out here, and you have Bentancur moving out wide to the wing. So what they actually do is he pivots in, collects the ball from Xavi, who's here, so that he actually makes a move, pivots in. So now you have Paulinho in this position, you have Jed Spence in this position, you have Richie coming and looking to receive, and then you actually have Bergvall looking to make a run in behind. Now, all of these things in isolation aren't necessarily a bad thing. You like to see midfielders making runs in behind. You like to see players moving and combining. Like, the function of what's actually happening here is all pretty good stuff. But my argument is that the players in these positions and the personnel on the field isn't getting the most out of these combinations and these rotations, right? Because then you see what happens is it gets played to Paulinho. It gets played to Paulinho, who then plays it back to Kuti. So now you have Benta here, you have Xavi here, and then you have Richie there, I believe. So now we've kind of just pulled ourselves out. We didn't go for that move. And now we're resetting things. So now you have Benta on the ball here. Lucas comes back. You have Xavi now, who's moved from around here to coming more centrally, which then brings Richie out here and Udogie out there, right? So you can see already kind of what I'm talking about as far as like the rotations of certain players isn't quite right when you have your number 10, your attacking midfielder, playing out on the wing. Because then what happens is you have Xavi finally gets on the ball there. Now you have Benta making a run in through the middle. You have Richie, who's your striker, who should be the one that's getting a lot of service into him, coming and dropping into this half space. And then you have Udogie making the run out here. So he's actually, he's making a good, like, I have nothing against what Udogie's doing because he can get to the byline. And we looked at that in the Brighton game, how effective that can be. But what actually ends up happening is you get Udogie getting on the ball. He plays in the cross here. So now you have Richie, which, one, it's probably not the right decision by Udogie to play that type of ball. But now you have Xavi is no longer involved in the play. He's not playing a combination with anybody. He's not looking to get back on the ball. He's played across into Udogie. You have Richie in this area. He's not really ready to get on anything. So really, Udogie's looking to play that ball into Benta or Bergvall to head the cross in. Is that the most efficient attack that we can create? I don't think so. And that's kind of my whole point. Now, one thing is, you do have Kudus over here in a lot of space, but by the time that Udogie gets the ball over there, you have Bueno right here that probably is going to get to Kudus, and it's going to be a difficult chance. So, still, it's probably not the best. It's probably not the most efficient and the best way that we could be using our players to create chances. And again, that's just another illustration of how often the players are crossing, or Frank is telling the players to cross. I don't know which one it is, but one of the two, it's still not, exactly what we should be doing. So going back over here, we go back to our fourth point, and that was the press was so good to start the season, and that's kind of died off. If we can't if we don't have creative players, we need to be creating chances through winning the ball high up the pitch. That was kind of the famous quote that Jurgen Klopp had at the beginning of his time with Liverpool, is that, like, you don't need a number 10 when you have, gegenpressing high up the field and you're winning the ball high up the field. That's creating the chances for you, right? So in that, we can see possession one, final third per match. We're currently 15th at 2.5 per match. Possession one in the midfield, we're currently 8th in the Premier League. So very low down the table and winning the ball high up the pitch, and then pretty much mid-table winning the ball in the midfield. And so this is the only statistic that I could find that's publicly available. I don't know if like Opta is, hides their PPDA stats behind a paywall or something like that, but this is what I could find that's close, the closest thing to it from FootMob, which is possession one, final third per match. And you can see Brighton currently 5.3 per match in the Premier League, leading that statistic. And we're all the way down here in 15th at 2.5, which is just barely above Burnley, Sunderland, Brentford, who are at the bottom of the table in that statistic. And so that's something that's really kind of. I'm thinking of the word annoying. I don't know if it's exactly annoying, but it kind of is, because it's like, we early in the season were really good at pressing high up the pitch, and that was a key part to how we were able to dominate some of those early games. The Man City game, the Burnley game, we earned multiple goals by winning the ball high up the pitch and then quickly converting. So that was kind of masking some of those build-up problems early on in the season. So the fact that we were so good at it early in the season and then we've dropped so far just goes to show you how much we've dropped off in our press. And I think that is something that Thomas Frank needs to bring back. I mean, we're only 6 games into the Premier League season, so and he's done a decent amount of rotation as well. So it's like there's no chance that could be a fatigue thing at this point. It clearly is just a tactical thing that either the players aren't performing or that he has instructed the players to do to be more conservative and sit back more in that mid block. So that's really that was something I was really high on about Frank early in the season, and to see that completely drop off is something I'm slightly worried about. I think that the press needs to come back at the intensity that it was previously for us to have a decent shot at climbing the table and staying high up in the table, and getting the most out of this squad because of our problems with build-up, right? Okay, so 5th and final one here. We should make Paulinho's loan permanent. He's become one of our most important players. 3rd in the Premier League in tackles, 2nd in tackles in the middle third, and that's basically what he does. That's kind of all he does, in a sense, at least at that elite level, right? Wins the ball and plays it forward. He doesn't do much else on the ball, has a good switch in his locker, but if you look through the passing numbers, which we kind of just did a little bit ago, he's like 6th or 7th in most metrics for our progression on being on the ball. He's scored 3 goals for us already, which is good. And apparently he can play center back in a pinch. He's a decent player as a replacement for Romero, as that step out and intercept center back with a decent ball on him. Although I do think that Romero has a better ball on him and better overall in possession. However, I do see the argument, the caveat I would make, that if we had somebody more progressive in that spot, it would help a ton with the takeaway that we had above about chance creation. So that's where I just want to touch on Paulinho for a second. As far as I think he's been one of the most important and impactful players this season. Not to say that he is the ultimate player that we need or the perfect player for the system, but I think for what Bayern is asking and what we could potentially get out of him over the next couple seasons, I do think that we need to make his move permanent. And I think that we should be looking in January, probably more likely next summer, at getting a more progressive number 6. But for now, and with his versatility to potentially play center back as well to fill in at that position, obviously Spurs fans know that that's a position we've been light on in the past. I think that it just makes sense to make his move permanent and continue to feature him, not as a consistent starter moving forward, over the next couple of years, but to have him in the rotation because of his versatility and because of what he does at an elite level, and that's winning the ball and then just moving it forward. I think there is a world where if we had better creation through the middle, through the personnel, like if we had 2 more creative number 10s, like say you had Paulinho, Xavi, and Decky in the midfield, or maybe even Matters, that might be a little bit too, light in the midfield. But if you had more progressive players higher up the pitch, then you kind of just need that guy to screen, win the ball back, push it forward. And then if the attack is working functionally, then that's, you're kind of just, you're attacking it that way instead of attacking, winning the ball higher up the pitch. So there's like a world where that does work. But I do think overall we should be making that move permanent. So last thing that we'll touch on here, and this is kind of just a bonus one because we've already gone through our 5, but Cuti Romero has taken a huge step up this season as being one of the best center backs in the world. Mickey has also looked incredible this season. Hasn't been quite nearly as involved, but has looked really good. And the Bodo game, I don't think he was necessarily at fault for anything, but let's just go over it real quick. Romero defensive action this season, 6th in the entire Premier League in interceptions, 30th in shots blocked, 14 in tackles in the defensive third. Passing, he's 12th in completed passes. Progressive passes, we don't show a player up until 27th, which is Cuti. 7th in long balls completed when you look at just defenders and not goalkeepers. He and Mickey both spend a ton of time on the ball, which is not ideal, but it goes to show what the impact that they are having at this current point. Mickey doesn't show up quite as much on the statistics, but he's 6th in completed passes, 7th in 76th in progressive passes, only a few long balls completed, less than Romero. And I think his passing game has gotten a lot better from previous seasons. Defensively, he's not top 50 in any metric, but you can see, obviously, the defensive impact that he does bring winning those balls and just his quickness and pace in transition. I look back at all of our goals allowed this season, and I don't think he's been directly involved at fault in any of the goals. Obviously, there was the Brighton goal where he steps up really high to Mark Jorginho, who plays the ball in behind. So you can kind of make an argument that was his fault, but it was, he wasn't the one that directly was marking the player that scored the goal. So that's kind of my whole argument there with, or not even argument. That's just something I wanted to bring up as a bonus, is that I think both Mickey and Cuti, we obviously knew that their impact was huge for this team, but I think they've both even taken a step up higher under Frank, and both shown to be 2 of the best center backs in the Premier League, and if not in the world, especially with Cuti. And it's still kind of fun that a lot of fans don't rate him because he's kind of like our hidden gem in a way, even though he's one of the best players in the world. So maybe that helps to keep him at the club for longer. But anyways, that's it for today's video. Let me know if you guys liked it. Let me know what you guys thought of it and what you think of the play this season and what we should improve on. And also, I want to know, I want to know what you guys think that we've done well this season. I don't want to be overly analytical or negative or anything like that. I want to, also highlight the fact that we're 4th in the table, and it's been a good rebuild so far with Frank as he's come in and become our head coach this season. So we will have a Leeds preview out tomorrow probably, and then a Leeds reaction. I'm actually going to be gone this weekend with my wife and her family, but I'll still be watching the game and then do a quick reaction for you guys. So yeah, looking forward to that one. I've really enjoyed Leeds being in the Premier League this season. That should be a fun one stylistically. So yeah, looking forward to Saturday. Thank you guys again. Thank you for all the support. Catch you guys in the next one.